We have two folks here from our ABA delegation, John Fellison and Governor-elect Kari Petrasek. We're going to make the presentation.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm John Fellison. I'm a member of the Washington State Bar Association. I just want to talk to you for a few minutes about the work that we do as delegates to the House of Delegates of the American Bar Association. I want to start by thanking you for your support. Because of your support of this work, we literally have a seat at the table. The American Bar Association formulates policy for lawyers throughout the United States and even worldwide. There are 170,000 members of the ABA. There are 590 members of the House of Delegates. So your support gives us a chance to represent attorneys in the state of Washington. I also want to thank Ms. Paris Erickson, the volunteer engagement advisor. Without her, none of this gets done. She's tireless in her efforts to keep us up to date, in the loop, and make sure we know what's going on. I just want to thank her for her support. The last person I want to thank is Mr. James Williams. He's the managing partner of the Seattle office of Perkins Coie. He leads our state delegation, and James and his firm, again, make sure people know who we are and what we're doing. So I'm grateful for that. As I said, the House of Delegates is the policymaking part of the American Bar Association. It represents state, local bars, and specialty bars throughout the nation. Like you, delegates like myself and Kari are volunteers. During the course of the year leading up to the meeting, we will get proposed resolutions. This is my visual aid. We get like 44 of these this year, made it to the final agenda. During the course of the year, we'll get these proposed resolutions. We'll read them. We'll discuss them with other delegates. We especially caucus with small Western states because we have some similar interests: Oregon, Idaho, Utah, other bars in the Western and Mountain time zones. We get together before the meetings, the mid-year and the annual meetings, and we try to talk about our issues to make sure we can kind of leverage our comparatively small voice individually. There are some large bar associations, but the point of all this is to get to a consensus, whether they're from New York or California. We want to make sure that we can represent the interests of the legal profession. Probably the most high-profile resolutions this year were in response to the Supreme Court's Dobbs decision. The ABA went on record for three main issues. One was opposing civil and criminal penalties for persons obtaining, assisting, or providing voluntary abortion. Also opposing state, federal, territorial, tribal regulations restricting access to contraception or contraceptive education. Both of those comport with Washington state law, RCW 9.02, the Reproductive Privacy Act. So our support of those basically mirrored Washington law, and based on public opinion in our state was the overwhelming public opinion of the residents of Washington. A third concern was a recommendation codifying marriage equality for same-sex or interracial marriages. If you've been following the Dobbs decision, you're probably aware of Justice Thomas's dicta, where he said that perhaps all these decisions should be reviewed. But again, the ABA came out supporting the Marriage Equality Act that I believe is currently in the House and House of Representatives, and they believe after the midterm elections will be taken up by the U.S. Senate. A final note of personal interest is Kari Petrasek. She ran for election and won as a delegate at large. So there are 590 members of the House of Delegates from all across the country, a lot of highly motivated type A lawyers, a lot of them from big states running very organized campaigns. She's very modest. I'm not saying this to embarrass you. I'm sorry, but this is really a big deal, okay? To run for an office like that and win is huge. It's a great accomplishment, and I just want to make sure that you were aware of this. And again, none of this happens without your support, so we're truly grateful. I'd be happy to take any questions, but I know Kari wants to speak a bit as well. Thank you.
So besides the seriousness of all the resolutions that John just spoke about, there were a bunch of other things going on that is always part of the annual meeting as well. Some of it social, but also some of it also very serious. To just start basically with other stuff that took part during meeting, one of the things that they always present that's presented by the House of Delegates Committee on Issues of Concern to the Legal Profession. They gave an amazing panel presentation entitled Democracy in Peril, How Can We Change the Course for America? James Williams, our state delegate, actually was one of the people that helped put together that issue of concern presentation. And it was, I would say, in the probably 10 years I've been in the House, probably, if not the best, definitely in the top 3 of the presentations that were given. They discussed the election, the threat to our democracy after the election, and the importance of telling the truth. And if any of you are interested in actually watching that presentation, contact me and I can send you the link. It's also available on the ABA website for people to watch. So in addition to that presentation, it's always also the passing of the gavel for numerous positions of the executive. There's going to be a new treasurer this year. That's, I believe, it's a 2-year position, but it's a 3rd year because you're treasurer-elect for a whole year leading up to that. And that's actually a GP solo friend of mine, Fritz Slangrock, who's from Delaware. And then there's also a new chair of the House, Jean Palmer Vance. And then our current president, Reginald Turner of Michigan, passed the gavel for the presidency to the new president, Deborah Enox Ross from New York. And she was actually sworn in by former Justice Stephen Breyer, who was present at the meeting. And actually on Saturday, the day before, or 2 days before we met, he was given the ABA's highest honor, the ABA medal. And he was given the opportunity to speak after that. And I have to say, he's quite a comical person. He told a lot of jokes, but also he had a lot of super interesting and serious things to talk about as well. And it was very enlightening and inspirational to listen to him talk. We also had the president's reception on Saturday, which was the first time in 2.5 years most of us were able to come together and see each other. So it was a quite joyous time, great opportunity to reconnect with old friends and meet a lot of new friends. So in addition to some of the ABA sponsored events, some of us from the Washington delegation and just State Bar Association, some people had been there for the bar president's part of the meeting that was the Wednesday to Friday or Saturday before the House of Delegates met. And we had an opportunity to go out to dinner together, which was a nice, relaxing time. It offered those of us that went an opportunity to get to know each other better, since there are many of us that we've seen each other in a situation like this, but never had a time to socialize. Perhaps we got to know each other a bit too much better because one person ended up having COVID and gave it to a couple of the rest of us, myself thankfully not included, but thankfully no one actually got too seriously sick and everyone recovered pretty quickly. All of us who are delegates for the Washington State Bar Association, again, like John said, we're all volunteers. We're truly grateful for the support that you give us. It has been mentioned amongst our delegation that the reimbursement policy for the delegates to the ABA, it would be nice if that could be amended so that the state bar delegates can seek reimbursement in the same way that all the other state bar delegates or volunteers within the association can receive reimbursement, as opposed to just receiving a flat amount. I do have to say, though, that we were all incredibly appreciative that Executive Director Nevitt gave a one-time approval for a slightly higher reimbursable expense limit for the annual meeting, because in large part at the time that we were all buying our tickets, there is the astronomical increase in airfare, which for something that usually costs $300 costs $700 to $1,000 to fly to Chicago for this meeting. And that's just for people living in Seattle. But our delegation is very active in the ABA, and we are looked highly upon within the ABA by the higher leaders in the association. And again, we thank you for the opportunity to serve the state bar in this important capacity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President. And first of all, congratulations to Governor-elect Petrosic on her position and election within the ABA. That's just wonderful for the organization, wonderful for us as well to have you there. So thank you in advance for what you're going to do with that. I have a question that I've wondered about, and I just haven't asked before, and I'm curious. We just did this bar structure analysis extensively over the course of the last year, and something that's always been sort of teasing at the back of my mind has been our ABA delegates, because as was mentioned earlier today, the ABA delegates do take political positions, and I've been curious as to if you know about the relationship between other states and their ABA delegates. So whether or not integrated bar structures in other states give instructions to the ABA delegates or do not. My experience is we do not give you instructions. You're selected for your wisdom and your integrity, and you go out and take the positions that you take. But I'm curious if you know what the relationship is between other states, and if you happen to know, for example, if any jurisdictions that claim to be Keller pure, what their relationship is with their ABA delegates.
That's a great question. I do not know the answer to that. Sorry, I don't know if you do.
So I would just say that there have been a few occasions where the Board of Governors have given our delegates direction on how to vote. This Board of Governors has given us direction on a couple hot button items on how to vote. And as for other states and delegations around the state, I am friends with many people in many different states, and I believe a lot of my friends are in California, and they have they're one of the largest delegations in the House of Delegates because they have their county bars are big enough. They have representatives. They're split into the North and South. They have their state bar. They have their volunteer bar. They have a lot of different bars. I believe that many of them, maybe not the county bars, but at a higher level in that state as well as other states, they, in some instances, like has been the case here, are given direction on how to vote. They caucus and they tell their delegates how they have to vote. Oftentimes, more often than this Board of Governors tells us how to vote.
Okay, I believe we have immediate past President Cicchetti.
Thank you, President Tollefson. I just wanted to say that I was honored to get a glimpse behind the curtain a little bit at this last House of Delegates meeting and sat and watched the work that was done. And it's a very impressive group of people looking at important issues. And long hours, more hours than I thought. The delegates work very hard and consider important issues and engage in them and good discussion, civil discussion. It was a very good experience for me to see how that operated and know that our delegation is solid. They're devoted to this work and they do great work. You can all be very proud of your delegation, and to know that they've subsidized it to some extent out of their own pocket to do this work for the state of Washington is impressive. And so we should all give them a huge thank you for the work that they do.
Governor Higginson.
Oh, thank you. I don't know who I'm directing this to, so anybody who's on the ABA delegation can feel free to answer. I'm just wondering to what extent you feel that you have enough information to vote representing the members of the Washington State Bar Association without going through some kind of a process to obtain their viewpoints. It seems to me that at a minimum, it would be a good idea to ask the Board of Governors to weigh in, since theoretically the board represents the members. But otherwise, isn't it just all of you deciding what you think is best and voting accordingly? And how does that really necessarily reflect what the members want?
Well, the American Bar Association is a private organization that is basically run by its members. So the American Bar Association is a private organization that is run by its members, and so its members determine its policy. We do try to make sure that our policies conform with Washington law and what our constituents want. Like I said, the key issues this year were in response to the Dobbs decision, and those positions overwhelmingly reflected both the position of the law in the state of Washington, as I said earlier, RCW 9.02, the Reproductive Privacy Act, as well as public opinion. So we do try to do some of that, yes. But there is no formal process in place right now. I think that's a great idea, and it's probably something we should look into.
Well, and I would also say that I believe that Paris Erickson receives the resolutions and it's somehow vetted, I think, maybe. Or at least we look at it and James Williams talks with Paris about if there's anything that needs to come before the board that is of super great importance that definitely we need to take a better look at and come to consensus of how to vote.
Okay, this will be the last, thank you very much. This will be the last question, and that's Chief Disciplinary Officer Indy.
Thank you, President Tollefson. I have a question about a specific resolution. And if it's too granular, you can wave me off. But it's
I got the whole list right here.
okay. It was 402, which was reaffirmance of the position that the sharing of legal fees with non-lawyers is inconsistent with the core values of the legal profession, which passed. And I know it was pretty controversial within the ABA.
Yes.
And was curious whether that was something our delegation discussed or took a unified position on, or was it sort of more of a blip on the radar?
So that was you're right, big issue. People were very concerned about the slippery slope. How is this going to transform the profession? And so people can vote their conscience. We're not told how to vote by Mr. Williams. Everybody votes their conscience. So we kind of, we get all these resolutions. It's like a law review article every week, and you kind of read through it and you discuss it with other attorneys that you know, other ABA members, other members of the delegation. And then I mentioned how we caucus with the other small states because, you know, there's always more we can learn. And so after that, basically members vote their conscience. But it's not like the parliamentarian whip process where we're told how to vote.
I want to thank the delegates for being here today and appreciate all the input they gave to the board. And thank you for being willing to serve in this capacity. And we got to take a recess because we got a Chief Justice on the line who wants to do a swearing in.
Well, it's an honor to serve, so thank you.